This is Doug Howard. I'm the president of the Growth Team Strategies, and I'm here today with the wonderful, delightful, sparkling Kathi Fleck, and another episode of our Selling the Dream, our podcast to talk about things that business owners should be thinking about if they want to sell their business or transition their business sometime in the future. Kathi, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Doug. How about you?
I'm doing good. I know you're just back from Europe, so you got that European glow about you.
I have to get my head wrapped around things again.
That's right. This is the jet lag episode, and I wasn't even on an airplane. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to prepare a successor, maybe some do's and don'ts when you think you have a particular successor in mind, because even though you might have somebody identified, there's a long way between that and actually successfully transitioning a business. So, Kathi, I know you've had people that have experienced this. I know you said that you thought about it at one point, bringing someone on to kind of get on that path. So, why don't you start our conversation just a little bit about some of the challenges and even just finding that successor and the things we want to do and not do when we're kind of bringing them along.
I think even before that, a lot of us as business owners have started this from scratch or picked it up from a family member. And so we really have a lot of our own blood, sweat, and tears in it. And it's kind of our baby. So to just give it to a stranger or sell it to a stranger sometimes seems a little bit difficult. And so the easy way out, I think, for a lot of us is wouldn't it be nice to have somebody who's already in the business, somebody we know and trust, a family member, whatever. But that's not always the case. It doesn't always work out that way. And I've come to the conclusion that we've put all our effort into this business. And if we're going to sell it, we need to make sure we're selling it to somebody who's capable and can take over the reins, obviously pay for it. So there's kind of that thinking that maybe my project manager can take it over. Maybe it can be an ESOP and my staff can take it over. And wouldn't that be nice? And so I've seen people go down that path, but they're really not sure that they're really going to be a good fit or, a son or a daughter. So I think they really have to be a little bit more objective, maybe get some outside consulting in just to take a look at who really is a good fit. And then how long are they going to be waiting? If it's 3-5 years, is that person still even going to be on board?
Yeah, I think, one of the experiences that I had as a consultant early on was someone that I know that was counting on a family member to take over the business, only to find out that family member didn't really have that in mind. And even though they worked very closely together, they just really hadn't had that conversation. I had a very different circumstance when I sold my accounting practice in that I had a successor. We had lots of conversations. We had worked out sort of the rough plan for moving forward, but there was no question that was the plan, only to find out that, they had a family discussion and decided to move from Maryland to Florida. And this was back in the days when you couldn't work quite as easily remotely. And even though we had a great succession plan, it was gone, overnight. And so, I think that notion of even just, is that successor going to be there is challenging because, we can't predict what's going to be going on in their lives.
Right. I think it's, if people can take a more objective look at what really is best for the company, because employees are not necessarily business owners. They're not necessarily able or capable or desiring to even take over the business. And so I think it's difficult to expect for that to happen. So I think a really objective look is what's best for the company and all the employees and clients that are already involved with the company. What's really best for them to move forward and what's going to work out in the long run.
Yeah. Well, so where would you get that objective measure, Kathi, do you think? Because I see this a lot of times not only when there's a successor, maybe one of a 2 or 3 person leadership team, or maybe it's one of 3 kids that are in the family. I think there's still some kids out there that feel like the oldest child has first rights to the business, which, I call that the King Charles effect. And that, I don't think that's the best way for succession to happen either. But but it is hard sometimes to really even do that evaluation.
Yeah, I think certainly evaluation can take place where an outside company comes in and values the business on a financial level. But there's also consulting that can take place in terms if they're working with a business coach, that person can also help them really evaluate it more objectively.
Yeah,
Some business owners include their staff, like a team, and they talk about it openly, and that's the route that they're taking. Others, like me, I did not have any discussions with anybody. I knew that there was nobody in my business who could take it over, who
yeah,
could pay for it, who could run it, and so I didn't even consider that.
yeah. And I think one of the things that we see too is that there's got to be some mechanism for preparing people, right? And so, we think about a 3 to 5 year period of time, and if we were already starting to think about selling the business to us, that maybe seems like a long time. It's
Hmm.
really not that long to get somebody really trained to step into not only the business as it stands today, but the business where we're going to grow it over that 3 to 5 year
Right,
period of
right.
time, right? Over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of businesses that were doing $3, $4 million, and now they're doing $8 million. And it would have been a challenge to transition somebody into that $4 million business.
Right.
Now we got an even bigger challenge, to
It's a
do that.
different format.
Right. But then the time it takes to say to somebody, to take somebody that's been, a middle level manager or maybe worked in some aspect of the business, but not the whole business, and get them familiar with the other pieces of the business they're not familiar. If they're a
Mhm.
salesperson that's never worked on the service side or the production side, or they've never dealt with accounting, 3 years to learn a lot of that stuff is not
Mhm.
that long a period of time.
Mhm. Almost seems like a general manager, somebody who's overseen pretty much all aspects and have had some financial responsibility for the business would be a good option to at least look at to see. And then is that person or team, are they able to financially purchase the business?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the things I think I've seen some people do really effectively is put together a long-term development plan where basically someone's going to cycle through a number of positions. You
right.
know,
Yeah.
you've been in sales, you've been on the customer service side, you've been on, you've taken responsibility for the accounting. But I think you're exactly right. I think there's a notion also that somehow if the business is strong, that successor, whether it's a family member or somebody on the leadership team, that they're financially strong, right?
Hmm.
And I know when we work with our transition planning framework, just started a project this week with a company that's out on the West Coast, and it's a business owner and two people that have been on board for quite some time, not family members, but have risen to the level of leadership. But one of the very first offline discussions we have to have, and I have no idea where it's going to go, is how financially strong are they?
Right.
Do they have any money in reserve? Do they own a home? Do they have equity? Do they even have good credit? Because even though, like I said, the business could be there, even if the owner finances all of it, you may have to go out and be able to buy a truck, or you may have to be able to sign
Hmm.
a lease, or, those kinds of things. And sometimes I think when we've built businesses, and I know we've both done that, we forget how many people along the way you've built relationships with that you
Hmm.
can draw on, right?
Yeah.
I can pick up the phone and call that banker, that accountant, that attorney, that
Hmm.
marketing person. Someone coming in, even if we give them the Rolodex, doesn't mean they have those relationships either.
Right. Or they'll build them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
I think
think
one,
really looking at it from their side
yeah.
is important. I also think one of the things that we see is how we structure a deal can also help that person become more financially sound. And so I've seen some people do a great job of saying at some point you're going to buy into the company, but part of what you're going to do right now is when you get a bonus at the end of the year, that's going to go in reserve, or that's going to
Right.
go
Mhm.
towards buying a few percentages, or things that say, okay, when we get to that jumping off point, you'll already have some equity, or you'll have some financial strength.
Right, they already have some skin in the game, so the owner, the current owner can be a little bit more confident that this person is serious.
Yeah.
I think also there's profit sharing, so if the business owner wants to share some of the profits, then they would have some stake in the business as well. Um, that could help
Yeah.
sure
So
assure the
I think those,
future.
the other thing I think with successors that people have to be really careful about, and it's sort of the other side of it, is I hear of some very well-intentioned business owners get very enthusiastic about the possibilities for someone on their team to maybe acquire the business. But in an offhand comment, you can say something that in your mind is just an idea or just a possibility. And the person hearing it may feel like it's much more of a commitment
Yeah.
than you intended to make. So when I say, hey, Kathy, you do a great job here, someday you can own this company. In
Hmm.
your mind, that might mean someday I'm giving you that company,
Yeah.
right? And
Or things change too. What if a health issue comes up or performance is not the same or they get lax or the business owner finds a different person or group that would be a better solution.
yeah, that's
So,
exactly right. So in all of that, let's nail that down to what do you think of 2 or 3 actionable things or really good recommendations for somebody that maybe has a family member or someone on their leadership team that could be a successor, but they're not quite there yet?
yeah, I think really they need an objective perspective on things. As business owners, we're just really, really close to it. And maybe we have wishful thinking on something. So maybe an advisory board or a banker or a business coach can help them really figure out what is the best next step and what does that take. So I think first is an objective perspective.
I agree.
Second is what's really good for the company, what works well. So if they have a team and they're hoping that the team can take over, and I've seen this with some of my business friends, they're hoping that the team could take over, but they're really not sure. They're not there yet. Um, to really look at it a little bit more carefully as far as what's going to work best for the company. Because if the business owner decides to stay with it, they're going to be sucked right back in and they're really not going to be out of the business, or the business could fail. And if they still have some financial ties to it, it could really work against them. Then it
Mhm.
also impacts all the rest of the staff and clients, the whole chain of everybody. So what's really best for the company? So, and I think to take the length of time that they need. So if they're looking at a 3-year plan, what's going to work best in 3 years? Is it to train? Is it to bring on a general manager? What really is needed?
Yeah. Okay. So I heard you say to get some outside perspective, right? To make sure they take the time that's needed and really to look at what's best for the company. Really, really great advice. So you knocked it out of the park once again. Really great job. All right. So, yeah, selling the dream. If you're in that mode or think you're going to be in that mode one day, you can never start soon enough to start preparing the company to be sellable. Whether you sell it, transition it, or you live to be 197 years old and keep it, the bottom line is a sellable business is going to be more valuable. It's going to be easier to manage and it's going to serve you well, whatever path you choose to take. Kathy, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Doug.
All right. And we will be back next week with another episode of Selling the Dream.
Thank you for listening to the Selling the Dream podcast, starring Doug Howard and Kathi Fleck. Both Doug and Kathi have built and sold successful businesses and hope this podcast will help other small business owners do the same. Tune in every week to hear more tips for increasing the value of your company so you get the highest return for your years of hard work when it comes time to sell or transition your business. Can't wait till next week? Check out our website for more information at www.growththemes.com.